You know, in the early days of the Roman Empire, it's amazing how one event can change everything. The death of a single beloved hero and the wild trial that followed, well, it wasn't just a scandal. It exposed a fatal crack in the very foundation of Roman power, and it kicked off an age of paranoia and fear. So today, we're diving into the story of Germanicus, his rival Piso, and a trial that truly broke Rome.
So that's the big question, right? How can the death of one guy and one messy trial bring a whole imperial system to its knees? The answer tells us everything about the fragile balance of power, personality, and public opinion in ancient Rome, a balance that was about to be completely shattered. All right, so at the very heart of this crisis were two men, the emperor and his heir, and their relationship, which was deeply fractured, was basically the spark that was about to light an imperial inferno. Okay, on one side you've got Emperor Tiberius. Think stoic, rigid, a huge believer in the rule of law, and also deeply unpopular. And on the other side, his adopted son and heir, Germanicus. He's the complete opposite. Charismatic, a wildly popular military hero, the people's champion. So while Tiberius respected the law, Germanicus commanded the love of the people. And that created a friction that the emperor just could not stand. Now, you have to understand, the political scene in Rome was a total minefield. The Senate was split right down the middle, with factions loyal to either Tiberius or Germanicus. Tiberius, being the stoic guy he was, actually tried to give the Senate more real power. But here's the thing, they were used to just taking direct orders from an emperor. His silence just confused them, and when he did step in, it felt totally random and tyrannical. He was trying to bring back the old ideals of the Republic, but all he was really doing was making more enemies. So this tension that's been simmering in Rome, it's about to absolutely boil over. The action is shifting to the eastern provinces, where Germanicus gets sent on a crucial mission, but with a rival deliberately put right by his side. Germanicus is handed this huge responsibility: go out east, deal with all the unrest, and personally crown a new client king in Armenia. This was a mission with massive importance, a real test for the man everyone thought would be the next emperor. But Tiberius was always suspicious. So to keep an eye on his super popular heir, he appoints a new governor of Syria, a man named Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso. Now, Piso was an old-school nobleman who absolutely despised Germanicus, and his appointment was no accident. It was a calculated move, a clear warning. And the rivalry ignited almost immediately. It started with public insults in Athens and escalated to Piso just flat-out ignoring direct orders for troops. The whole thing really came to a head when Germanicus took an unauthorized trip to Egypt, which was a major violation of imperial law, giving the already suspicious Tiberius a very real reason to be absolutely furious. And look, Piso wasn't just being difficult here. He was actively building his own power base out in the east. He started swapping out Germanicus's loyal officers for his own guys, and he even encouraged corruption just to win the army's loyalty for himself. This wasn't just insubordination anymore. This was bordering on full-blown treason. This escalating rivalry was building towards a really tragic turning point. A personal feud was about to explode into a national crisis with a sudden and very mysterious death of Germanicus. So while he's returning from Egypt, Germanicus discovers that Piso has undone all of his reforms back in Syria. And right after that, he suddenly falls incredibly ill. He gets a little better for a bit, but then he relapses, and his condition just gets worse and worse and worse. As his health starts to fail, a dark suspicion takes root in Germanicus's mind. Given their hostile relationship and everything Piso had been doing, he becomes absolutely convinced that he has been poisoned. So Germanicus makes it official. He formally renounces his friendship with Piso. Now, in Roman politics, this was the equivalent of a public declaration of war. It severed all ties and basically branded Piso an enemy, right before he ordered him to get out of the province. And this is the moment that changes absolutely everything. With his dying breath, Germanicus doesn't just ask his friends to remember him. He demands revenge. He commissions them to prosecute Piso for his murder. The hero's final words became a call to arms that would echo all the way back to Rome. So now the battle moves from the provinces right into the capital. The news of Germanicus's death creates a political firestorm in Rome, and the demand for justice becomes a roar that no one, not even the emperor, can possibly ignore. Back in Rome, people are just consumed by grief and rage. Before a shred of evidence is even presented, the public has already made up its mind. Piso is guilty. But the rumors, they go even further, whispering that Emperor Tiberius and his powerful mother Livia were the real masterminds behind it all. So the trial boils down to two main charges. For murder, the prosecution tells this wild story of poison and magic, but honestly, the evidence is incredibly weak. However, the charge of treason, that was for raising his own army and trying to retake Syria after Germanicus died. And that was undeniable. Piso was caught red-handed. A fair trial? Not a chance. Outside the Senate, the mob was literally tearing down Piso's statues and screaming for his blood. And inside, the senators were totally swayed by all that public hysteria and, of course, their own political games. Justice was not the main goal here. And then, the shocking conclusion. Seeing that there was just no hope of being acquitted, abandoned by all his powerful friends, Piso takes matters into his own hands. Before the Senate can even deliver a verdict, he's found dead. He had committed suicide. Piso's death left Rome with this really unsettling question. Was this an admission of guilt, the final act of a guilty man? Or was it the desperate act of someone who knew he'd been railroaded by a biased system? In the end, justice was denied a verdict. So the trial was over, but the damage was done. This whole affair left a permanent scar on the Roman political system, and it kicked off an era of paranoia that would define the rest of Tiberius's reign. The fallout was just catastrophic. Tiberius's relationship with the Senate, completely destroyed. The public grew to resent him, totally convinced he was involved. The Senate, kind of tasting blood, even tried to punish Piso's family after he died, which was a direct challenge to the emperor's authority. This trial set a terrifying precedent, kicking off a long, dark period of treason trials that would shake Rome to its core. What this trial ultimately did was expose the broken reality of the Roman government. You had Piso, this arrogant nobleman, acting like the old republic still existed, a time when powerful senators could defy authority and get away with it. But then you had Tiberius, who was forced to throw out his ideals and play a ruthless political game just to survive. It proved once and for all that the republic was well and truly dead. Ultimately, the trial of Piso showed everyone that Rome's legal and political systems were just buckling under the weight of this new imperial power. And it leaves us with a question that's still relevant today. When the very institutions that are supposed to provide stability and justice become tools of politics and public hysteria, what's left to hold an empire together?